Well, we finally got around to this, I guess. Super Mario Bros. 3 for the Nintendo Entertainment System had a long-winded introduction preceding this that sort of dovetailed into my personal experience with the game, but then I decided to cut it because it ran too long and quite frankly, you don't care. Maybe some other time then. In any event, released in 1990, Super Mario Bros. 3 is either a return to form after playing Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, or an evolution of the form after playing Super Mario Bros. 2 Japan. In either case, it's a big step forward towards building upon and establishing the Super Mario formula that would define the rest of the franchise more or less, and resulting in one of, if not the most beloved game in the NES library, let alone the Super Mario series. And honestly, it's not hard to see why, since this is a very big game. So big in fact that they couldn't fit battery backup. My biggest pet peeve with this original incarnation on the NES, getting that out of the way right now. Let's move on. The game boasts 8 worlds for you to tackle, each with its own theme. A desert world, a world of giants, a world of pipes, and so on and so forth. On top of that, each world has a good number of levels within. About 8 to 10 per world, at the very least, with some boasting even more than that. The scope of the game is presented in the form of a map where you move your little Mario around. Naturally, to proceed onwards, you'll have to clear levels on the map, of which there are a variety as represented by various icons on the map. There are your standard make your way to the goal levels, the most straightforward variety of levels, the castle levels, which unlock doors when you clear them by beating the Boom Boom mini-boss that guards them, the roaming Hammer Brothers, which act as encounter points, much like most role-playing games, earning you reserve items for your on-map inventory, and finally the fortress, where you board an airship and play an auto-scrolling level in an attempt to reclaim the wand from the Koopa Kid in charge, thus moving on to the next world upon clearing. Also on the maps are toad houses where you could get items to add to your inventory for later use, as well as games of chance for extra lives, and so much more. Fairly straightforward stuff. Once you start a level, it's classic Mario fare. There are Goombas to stomp, question blocks to punch, coins to collect and earn extra lives for every 100, Koopa shells to pick up and throw, and power-ups to uncover. The usual super mushrooms and fire flowers make their return to give Mario an extra hit or two. But then you have new power-ups such as the Super Leaf, which transform you into Raccoon Mario, allowing you to fly with a full P meter on the bottom. Just go with it. Further down the line, Mario will uncover different suits. A frog suit will let you swim better, a Tanuki suit will let you fly and turn into a statue for stealth purposes, and finally there's the hammer suit with its arcing hammers and fireproof shell. Along with new suits comes new tricks, such as P-switches that turn bricks into coins and uncover secret doors, a giant shoe you could ride in for precisely one level, platforms that change direction when you land on them, auto-scrolling levels, levels that crush you, Zelda-esque whistles that welcome you to the warp zone, and yes, this is a game that packs in a lot of stuff, whether it be new enemies or obstacles to contend with, or new toys to play with. And with the themed worlds, you're bound to come across something new along the way, whether it be giant enemies or new spinning gimmicks, sort of expanding on the level philosophy of Super Mario USA in some ways, and yet backtracking in others with shorter levels. Yeah, the levels in Super Mario 3 are short, sometimes almost to the point of blink and you'll miss it lengths, which partly explains why there are so many levels in the game and also why there are no checkpoints in the game. In addition to this, there are some other potential drawbacks. With this being a 2-player game, Luigi is back to being a Mario clone with none of his unique attributes from Super Mario 2. Take your pick. The lack of a save function via battery backup or even a password system hampers the game somewhat, resulting in some considerable dedication and time sinking to go through the game in its entirety, or resorting to warp whistles to shorten the journey somewhat and miss out on all the fun in between. This of course is something of a moot point nowadays since we have things like Nintendo Switch Online, NES Classic Editions, and even the old Virtual Console services that have save states. And truth be told, I never played the original version of the game in full until I got the game on the Wii Virtual Console years ago, which is fine, but would have been nice if such a save function, or any save function for that matter, was included on that NES game pack. But I digress. Those are somewhat minor nibbles on an otherwise fine package. For what it's worth, There's plenty of varieties in terms of the levels you tackle, the enemies that the game tosses your way, the array of new powers to toy with, and just a sense of wonderment as you enter the next world not knowing what to expect next, which is also a moot point considering how old this game is and how many people have played it since in all sorts of various forms. And as far as control goes, Super Mario Bros. 3 is probably the best controlling Mario that I've played on the NES, and on a larger scale, almost better than any 2D Mario game that has come before or since, with perhaps Super Mario World being almost on par. Mario has good momentum in the air, the extra bounce he gets from stomping on enemies when you hold down the A button is high and worthwhile, and save for the extra speed boost you get from filling the power meter, which is for your flying bits, it's pretty much the same as the first game. I'm not a fan of the flying in this game, having to tap A constantly to stay airborne or float downwards. In this regard, I think Mario World did a better job of it with the cape, but otherwise, good job. It's probably the best controlling Mario I've played, and that's covering quite a bit of ground. So when you start up the system, the game opens up with the curtains being raised, and a little play takes place before your eyes, showing off some of the new sprite work, which looks better than what came before. Mario looks a little pudgier, and the transformation into different forms are a nice touch. Old foes are given new facelifts, yet retain enough that they're familiar to those who have come before, while new foes come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Some of the backdrops are basically bigger versions of what we've seen before, bigger hills, clouds, question blocks animated rather than glow, that sort of thing. The maps are functional, simplistic, they get the job done in depicting the world you're traveling in. Not much more to it than that, but what's there, it's done really well, and it's a step above what came before. But what really sold me on Super Mario 3 were the transitions. The fade in, fade out between scenes, the circular transition when entering a new level on the map. It's not much, but as a kid, this blew me away that this Nintendo box thing was doing the same kind of transitions you see on the TV. It's really a nice little touch in making the game feel like a big deal instead of just another game, and something I've always enjoyed seeing in some of these NES games, especially later on. Adds a little something to the graphical quality of these games and the presentation, but that's just me. Unsurprisingly, Super Mario 3 has some top-notch quality sound in this here Nintendo game. A small pool of in-game themes, but more so than what came before, with a variety of tones befitting the type of level. A standard overworld theme, a more exciting overworld theme, moody and militaristic themes for the castle and airship stages respectively, even a reprisal of a classic underworld tune. They're simplistic yet catchy. And then you have the maps, which have their own unique simplistic tune, which are also quite catchy. And the sound effects are a mixture of reused sounds from the older games, as well as some new ones. Nothing groundbreaking, but still quality top-notch stuff. For many people, Super Mario Bros. 3 represents the absolute pinnacle of the NES gaming library, and perhaps one of the best, if not the absolute best ever on the console, or even the Mario series as a whole. I don't know if I'd go that far, but this is an otherwise excellent game that took what worked before, the classic gameplay of SMB1, the level variety of SMB2, even the two-player mini-battle mode thing is essentially a remake of the original Mario Bros. Arcade game, refined it to make it better, and added a whole bunch of shit to sweeten the deal. It's the absolute best kind of video game sequel. Something old, something new, something familiar, and something blue. I have no idea where I was going with that, it sounded better in my head. Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES is worth trying out, but it's not the best version of the game out there since it's lacking a save function. That's a moot point if you're playing this on a virtual console, an NES Classic Edition, or the Nintendo Switch Online service, which has save state functionality. The game has also been ported to the Super Nintendo via the Super Mario All-Stars release, and that has saves. But to me the game was absolutely perfected with the Game Boy Advance port, which is probably my preferred iteration for a variety of little touches. But either way you go, this is one of the milestones of Super Mario lore, and if you have yet to play this absolute classic in any way, shape, or form, give it a whirl. It's one of the better ones out there.